Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to another Pro Performance. With Pro Performance, we will be providing content every other Thursday on market trends, relevant topics in the industry, and go over things that can help you grow as a mortgage professional. This Pro Performance is all about a hot topic that most of you are very in tune with, and that is leads and lead management. So, welcome to our Pro Performance Fast Track your fall pipeline. I'm your host, Stephen Ballone, Vice President of Sales here at Rocket Pro, and I certainly could not do this without our guest. And I'm thrilled to have here with me today Scott Payne. Scott is the Chief Growth Officer of Shape Software, and Scott has about 20 years of experience in the mortgage industry. He's helped thousands of loan officers and brokers really organize their pipelines, help them follow faster, and convert more leads. And Scott, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
So awesome to be with you guys today.
Absolutely. Now, Scott, we've been getting to know each other the last several weeks, and you have a very tenured history in the industry that spans over 2 decades. So why don't we start with how you got in the industry and your journey over to Shape Software?
Yeah, so I started my career as a loan officer in a direct sales call center, and at a company at the time called Syntex Home Equity, became NationStar, now called Mr. Cooper. And as I sat at my desk, I really sat there with a computer and an LOS and a lead management system, I guess you could call it. But I found myself always trying to figure out ways to work my leads better. And whether that be printing them off and stacking them in a certain order, I ended up moving to like Excel and color coding them and what have you. And I was always trying to find the newest way to try to organize my leads in the right way, in the right order, and so on and so forth. And as technology evolved throughout the years, we implemented systems that would prioritize those leads for us and distribute those leads for us um, throughout the company. And that led to my career into the software space because I was able to take those same things that I learned, as a loan officer, boots on the ground, calling people and following up and making sure I was following up at the right time, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks, to take that and move that into the actual, software space itself. And now where I'm at Shape, I sit in a seat where I help thousands of loan officers with prioritizing their day and distributing leads, and now moving into the world of AI and incorporating AI now into their business, and in how they follow up and do a number of things there. So that's been my history, boots on the ground. I actually spent time in a retail type branch as well, so I get to learn that environment as well into the mix. And so I've kind of seen it all, been a sales manager along the way. So yeah, that's been my history.
That's awesome, Scott. We appreciate your tenacity and your journey, and thank you so much for sharing that with all of us here. Look, I know we have a ton of incredible things to talk about here today, and really what we want our audience to walk away with overall is just let's cover some tactics to help increase our partners' pipelines. How to use different tools to qualify leads quickly, and then lastly, really demonstrate techniques to ultimately get clients through the funnel. And so our goal is to provide that framework to streamline lead management, but also discuss best practices for converting prospects. And I know with your history and all the experience that you've had, that should be not an issue. And then walk away with some practical tools that our broker partners on this webinar can implement immediately today. And so before we get into the meat and potatoes of this webinar, really just want to talk about why we're here today. And so, whether you've been in the industry for a month, a year, or 20 years like yourself, Scott, this industry and leads in general, they've evolved. And I know, Scott, that you're always talking about leads, you're running trainings, you're doing presentations, and a constant as of late is really the evolution of lead sources, technology, and just the mortgage industry in general. So, thinking about that advancement in tech, we've seen expectations for both broker owners, loan officers, consumers. We've seen a shift there, and we've seen this industry evolve very, very quickly in front of our eyes. So, what are you seeing out there from an evolution perspective?
Well, I think in this day and age, customers and consumers are expecting one thing, and that is when I press a button, I expect that I'm going to receive calls right away. And I expect a certain level of service is going to happen throughout the process. they've either done that in the last couple of years, or they've gone through a process, whether it be buying a car or buying some other high dollar item, and they've been through a process where they expect when they press a button, they expect something to happen. And so you have to be able to deliver on that. If you end up calling your lead record that comes in 3 days later, and you really get to stick out like a sore thumb when everyone else is calling the lead right away, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there are things that I've learned over time that can really help you stand out if you can't be the fastest, right? I think there's companies out there who you're competing against that are just going to be able to beat you when it comes to speed to lead. Speed to lead is super important, as we've seen over the years. But there are some things that you could be doing in your strategy today, which we'll talk about at some point here today, that is really going to allow you to to really stand out, whether or not you're the first person to call. Maybe it's something like maybe it's the last person to text for the day, and you send them a text the last 8:59 p.m. that just says, "Hey, I know you probably got overwhelmed today, but here I am to help, and here's how I'm going to make it easy for you." Just one little takeaway for people. You don't have to be the first, but maybe you're the last of the day, and you still stand out as someone who reached out. As a quick takeaway there.
Love that. That's a great pro tip here. And as you were talking about just the abundance of phone calls that a consumer might get or emails, and that's the expectation moving forward. It got me thinking about another maybe something that lines up with abundance, and that's really the responsibilities of some of our partners out there, right? Like when you're a broker owner, you wear the compliance hat, you wear the marketing hat, you wear the training team leader hat. You're sometimes the sales pro on the team, or you're the biz dev person trying to find new relationships and ways, to grow your business. So we know that our broker partners, they're juggling dozens of tasks every single day. And so it makes me think about two words and very important themes that we'll talk about here is prioritization and organization. When you're juggling that much, can you just, talk a little bit about like, how do you see prioritization and organization impacting lead management and conversion overall?
I think it comes down to obviously a system to be able to do those things. But I think one thing that gets taken maybe not advantage of enough is right here in your pocket or sitting at your desk, which is your phone. And what is in your phone and what could be in your phone if it's not already, which would be some AI, right? And so, Stephen, through some of these meetings we talked about, I was coming into a meeting with Stephen and I was telling him about what in my drive in to the office, I had already done 3 important tasks for the day. And I had done that through a conversation with my AI bot. I just pulled up ChatGPT, I pulled up the voice agent, I started talking to it about what I needed to do for the day so that it could go ahead and do the prep work for me so that when I walked in, I was ready to go. Another tactic we talked about was, practicing your sales pitch, getting ready so that when you walk into your desk and, focusing on a time block for when you walk in, don't check your voicemail, bad news on the voicemail, come in, utilize that time to sell right away. And you could use your phone. The best salesperson, by the way, could be your AI agent. They know the best ways to sell, the best way to combat rebuttals, etc. They can help you out. So if you come in and say, "Hey, today I want to practice my rebuttal against rates," you can ask your AI agent to be a customer and to question your rates. And you can practice your sales pitch on your drive into work or on the treadmill or walking, on your morning walk, and practice your sales pitch right on your phone. And that way when you hit your desk, you're ready to go.
No, that's really good. I wrote down proper planning prevents poor performance. So it sounds like you're really got a solid plan heading into the day or heading into a midday meeting or whatever the case is, but leveraging technology to be prepared to take on the day and just kick off your day properly. You know, I remember being a loan officer, I'd come in the office early and really kind of sort out my day. And it was through a thick stack of papers on my desk trying to find what's the best lead, what should I be working on next. And even when I had a plan written down, like this is the hours I want to work on, such and such, and this is when I want to work on my pipeline, and this is why I'm a prospect for new business. Look, in this industry, we know that fires just pop up out of nowhere. There are things that can kind of interrupt that plan, and so I guess how do you ensure that you're working on the right thing at the right time to give you the highest chance of success?
I think it comes down to, and this comes back to some AI tools potentially as well. You could leverage, and you can use AI to search for some tools or for some methods, or ask it for some advice on methods, and tell it about your day and what some things come up, and give it, some information to help guide you for something that works for you. But really, at the end of the day, it comes down to, think of it like scoring. Scoring, think of it like a batting order for baseball, right?
Mhm.
You want your leadoff hitter, they're going to get on base, and that they're going to make it to second base pretty quickly. They have the best chance of scoring. So think about your leads, that same kind of batting order. Who has the best chance of scoring first, right? When you're dealing with your leads, you're looking at it the same way. You have your cleanup hitter coming up fourth. That's the one is going to, drive in the runs. And towards the end of the batting order, maybe you have the 8-9 hitter. They may not score right away, not score to the second or third inning, but hey, they're going to score at some point, right?
Sure.
And you got to make sure you're still working those leads in that order. So think about it maybe in that aspect. You have to have them scored in the right way. And, from a time block perspective, yes, things are going to come up, but you really cannot lose focus on that. And I think that, being at least prepared, because, lead management, it's not fun, right? No one listening today is probably saying, I really come into work every day excited about calling my leads. No one does that. But if you come in prepared and you're ready to sell, you're more likely to stick to that time block you have set. And you're more likely to push the fires off to the side and focus on your lead management because you're prepared for that day, ready to sell.
Oh, those are really solid tips. I mean, the biggest thing is, I think of time blocking and lead prioritization. I find myself constantly reprioritizing my day and, constantly thinking about like, what's my next move? What's my next move? What's my next move? And just the word discipline comes to mind when I think of that. And I think hand in hand with the word discipline is like contact strategy, right? There's a lot of folks in this industry, I think, have developed contact strategies, they've implemented a contact strategy, and they've executed on a contact strategy. And I think what's made maybe contact strategies maybe a little more challenging right now to operate in is there's so many different lead sources out there. There's so many different vendors to really choose from. And oftentimes we find that, brokers might be fishing from the same pond, which it wasn't always like that, even just a couple of years ago. So thinking about contact strategy, Scott, like what behaviors and touch points give you, in your opinion, the greatest odds of winning and converting?
So I mentioned the last contact of the day earlier. I think that's a great strategy for those looking for a day one.
Mhm.
Right? Speed to lead is super important, and you may not be first, and you're going to get kind of caught up in that mix of everyone calling them right away. But if you get those customers who are going to get so overwhelmed right away, maybe weren't expecting that influx of calls right away, they start ignoring their calls. Think about the last person to text, right? If you look at your text messages and you go through, the first person to text is going to be at the bottom of the list. The last person to text is going to be at the top of the list. And if you send that last text and you're at the very top and they finally sit down on their couch and they get a chance to look at their text messages for the day, who's at the very top of the list? Now you are, because you're the last person to text. So that's one little nugget that I think works well. The next part I would say is pay attention to the time of day that the customer raised their hand. What time did they go online to put in their inquiry, and use that strategically later on in the process, whether that be day 2 or day 15 or day 30 or day 180 for that matter. Because when someone goes online, that's usually the time of day that they might be available to talk. For me, I'm going online maybe around my lunch break. And guess what? I'm not just going online and pressing submit. I'm going online and doing some research for about 30 minutes, 15, 30 minutes, and then hitting submit. So use that time of day strategically to maybe call them 15 to 30 minutes before they actually raise their hand on day 15 when everyone else has stopped calling it. And now you're calling around the same time of day, they might be available, and you're calling to check in to see maybe they gave up because it was too overwhelming. And now here you are calling them on day 15, day 30, day 180, whatever the case may be.
No, that's solid. And it just made me think a little bit more about long-term conversion and some things that I did as a loan officer, and but just to kind of go back and think about the words that you're talking about is like you know that the consumer is getting sometimes bombarded with a lot of phone calls, heavy contact, phone calls, emails, texting, but you're being very like empathetic. You're putting yourself into that person's shoes and saying like, look, I know this can be overwhelming. Let me make this easy for you. Let's set some time up to discuss, or whatever your differentiator is at the end of the day. But I think that's something that really connects and resonates with people. It's like, this person seems like they genuinely care and they're authentic about what I might be feeling currently. And I know that's a huge, huge way to convert in sales is obviously to have that connection. And so with connection, with empathy, I started thinking about another trait maybe that goes along with contact strategy. And this is where I think I personally, excelled at, because I wasn't the person who was gonna, convert that opportunity in the first day or two. That wasn't my style. I was more of a long-term play. So I think about the word persistence, right? Like we're thinking about day beyond 15, because like, look, we know that you mentioned borrowers could bow out because of just the influx of calls they weren't expecting, or something changes with a loan term, or maybe they, for whatever reason, the borrower's misqualified and the loan officer didn't find an angle that maybe you could find. But I always felt like my conversion just went up after day 15 because people naturally dropped out. So thinking about that, thinking about contact strategies like day 15 and beyond, what are some long-term contact strategies that you've noticed that brokers find a lot of success in?
Well, I was actually going to start a little bit before that, in that you I think every broker needs to understand what is their empathetic process, what is their desired empathetic process, what does that need to look like? Because I use the term secret shop a lot, or to soften it up, I've used the customer experience screening. But you need to put yourself in the shoes of these borrowers to understand what is it that they're experiencing, and then take the mindset of, okay, I don't want it to be that experience. I want to take that empathetic approach. And once you understand what that is, then when you come to day 15 and day 30, you have your lead in your system or other people's system, and you can understand what they're doing or not doing, and understanding what would I desire it to be like, right? And so day 15, day 30, I mentioned the time of day is very important as to when you're calling. But to really understand, let's say it's a misqualification. I see a lot of times where a loan officer at another company will just kind of throw it in the trash. They just throw that customer away, and they're not setting them up on a really good nurture type campaign specific to their situation. Or they'll just throw them in a generic nurture type of situation where it's, if you're interested in the future, let us know. But I think that with the use of whether it be AI or just leaving really good notes or taking the right, disposition, if you will, in a system that tells it this is the nurture path this customer needs to be on, that's specific to their needs, whether it be credit or employment. They don't have a job right now, so I need to nurture them with things that can help them maybe find employment or improve their credit. Will help you down the road, day 30, day 60, and day 180 down the road, because ultimately you want to be top of mind. You
Mhm.
want to be the person they think of when they get a job 90 days, 180 days out, that they're thinking of you because you're the one who's been sending them the right content.
No, I I think you're spot on with that, and it's that genuine authenticity and empathetic approach that I think is so important. It's probably the number one trait I think in any salesperson, because I think all salespeople are leaders, right? Like that's a trait that I think is a must, and I think you displayed that very very clearly for the group there. So thank you for that. You know, a lot of our listeners right now and audience are folks that are call it team leaders, maybe the owners of the business, branch leaders, what have you. Um, and we talked about all these different strategies and contact strategies that are implemented and executed on. And you started to talk a little bit about secret shop your company, and I think that's a good segue for us to kind of step into technology and think about that, because a lot of partners have processes built already and laid out for how they expect or want things to go. How do you ensure when you're the owner of an organization or maybe a sales manager, when you're saying this is the contact strategy, this is what's going to happen next, this is how we want it to look and feel or sound like? talk to me a little bit about the strategy of secret shop your company.
So my secret shop in this example is a little bit different than most because I think when you think secret shop, it's walk into a business, secret shop the process when you buy something, etc. I've heard secret shops that will go through the application process and listen to the actual application that's taken. But this one's much different. This is I put a record in the system and I don't answer the phone. I just see when my calls get made. I watch what emails are sent, what text messages I receive. I track the date and times they go out. I put it in a timeline. I kind of look at it over time and see like how is it spaced out the right way? Is it spaced out enough time? A lot of times we see like double calls right back to back or double voicemails that are left or emails that are sent back to back and not meant to, a number of things. So you let it go for call it 15 days, 30 days, just watch what happens. But then the magic bullet is this, is that you actually then call back to whoever on your team. So let's say you're the branch manager, you call back in, and now you'll do a little bit of secret shop where you're actually going to talk to your loan officer, have a brief conversation. You're going to act like you're interested, and you're going to ask them, say, actually, I can't talk right now. Can you call me back tomorrow at 2 p.m.? And now we're going to track follow up. How well do people follow up? And I've seen over the years, one of the biggest gaps or biggest opportunities is how well do we follow up on appointments? And how well do we follow up on time? And how well do we send a reminder to the customer that we're going to call them at this time? And if I do call them back on time, how well do I follow up with that opportunity if they don't answer the phone at the scheduled time? Do I follow up again the next day and the next day? And what happens to the customer after that? Because it's clearly a customer who was interested to at least call back in and say they were interested and ask for a call back. I've seen the biggest opportunities fall off there. And so my secret shop is a little bit different than normal, but you're really just tracking what does that lead experience look like. Then once you have the results, you can then map out or kind of reconfigure everything the way that you would want it to be, and then put those processes in place, retrain your team, and really show them that timeline and say, this is why we're making these changes because this is what it was and this is what we desire it to be.
No, I think that's that's awesome. I wrote down the word gaps, right? Gaps in process and addressing those gaps. And when we're going through this secret shop exercise and looking at technology, and this might be, look, I think this is something that whether you're doing one loan a month, 20 loans a month, or 200 loans a month, and regardless of the technology, regardless of one's budget, we had a conversation about tech gaps in general, and it really kind of opened up my eyes to how important it is sometimes to connect with other professionals and network and talk about like what's working and what's not. But like, you talk to thousands of brokers a year about their technology and their tech stack. And so do you mind kind of going a little bit deeper into like the things that you notice consistently that might naturally cause gaps versus it being necessarily like a lack of execution on someone? It might just be something deeper than that with technology. Do you mind going over that, Scott?
Yeah, I think that, what we see a lot is that, there's a lot of shiny objects out there and there's a lot of new technology coming out. And so it's easy to say, yes, I want that. Yes, I want that. Yes, I want that. And before you know it, you end up with tech overload. And when you end up with tech overload, sometimes those systems don't talk well with one another or go into the right step in the process. That timeline gets a little out of whack with the systems talking to one another. And ultimately, what that leads to is people not trusting the system or not being able to trust the data from this system to that system. And then you can't automate off of that. I can't send an email because I can't trust the statuses correctly. And I don't want the right thing being sent, or the wrong thing being sent to the customer at the wrong step in the process or to the referral partner. And so, really what we see is try to, combine systems into one, or at least have one main hub as the middleware, the middleman, if you will, between your other systems. And so, let that kind of control it. And then I think when you do that, you can start to leverage, if you've chosen a tool as your middleware and it has tools like AI, driven type stuff. Now you can get into the world of, well, I place my phone call in the system, and so I can transcribe that call, and put that as a summary into the notes. And that can be used in some other system down the road as it relates to how I nurture them a year from now. and how I follow up and how I send emails because of a conversation I had 6 months ago that referenced their dog's name, and I can send them an email that has a dog on it because I know the dog because of multiple systems not talking to one another. As one example, it's simply off an AI phone call summary.
Yeah, I mean, it's really incredible what AI can do right now. If the right data is fed and the prompts are set up, I mean, whatever you can imagine, it feels like can be done at this point,
Absolutely.
which is wild at how quickly that has evolved. So really good stuff about tech. I thought of the one of the isms we have here at Rocket is, simplicity is genius, and just kind of simplifying things down to the ridiculous, and making sure that everything's talking to each other allows you to really expand, grow, and scale sometimes versus vice versa. Like sometimes less is more versus kind of overdoing it. And definitely something for all of us to consider and think about here. Going to I think we've had a lot of good stuff that we've talked about here today, Scott, and we're kind of nearing the end here, but I'd like to really hone in on a couple things here. You mentioned a couple pro tips along the way, but really advice for some brokers of different setups, different sizes, and at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is, again, working with thousands of brokers through Shape software. You mentioned what you look for with the tech stack. You mentioned like some of the different guides. Is there anything bigger picture or small picture, like a practical checklist that you always seem to consistently give to folks that you're doing consults with?
I think the secret shop is a big one, but I think you know, I encourage the branch manager, if you will, to, I used to call it like roll up the sleeves and go sit on the phone or go
Mhm.
shadow their loan officers for the day and watch and learn and hear and observe and watch all of the different clicks that they're doing on their computer throughout the day, and just kind of what it will trigger, I think, for branch managers is to see that, oh wow, I didn't realize this process took 15 clicks to do. I bet you I could simplify that with 4 clicks and get rid
Mhm.
of these 11 clicks 60 times a day, and where I could simplify that. So I think that's one quick way, one quick win, just by observing and investing 1 day a month, call it, sitting with their sales team.
That's great. Phenomenal. So, look, we've had a healthy discussion around prioritization, organization, how it impacts the pipeline. We went deep into contact strategies, technology. Flirted with AI a little bit. And I know there's so much more we can go over here. But four things that I really got out of this, I took note of, just talking about, time block your day, work on the things that matter most when they matter most, understanding the time of day and what's going to give you the highest chance of conversion. I think the second thing was be first, and be clear. And if you're not going to be first, then be different. And designing your systems to generate opportunity for you, right? Simplifying things, having the right vendors in place, being able to create something that personalizes, but kind of remove that. You use the phrase when we've been talking about remove decision friction, right? Develop a system or flow that allows you to understand what is the next clear step in your day or business. And then this concept of secret shop monthly, just developing a culture of being able to inspect what you expect, sitting with your loan officers, just observing and being hyper aware of what's going on in your business. So, a lot of good stuff here so far, Scott. And I want to, close with a quote before we get into like Q&A and wrap this thing up. But a famous author once said, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. And so I know that you had 3 action items that you wanted to share with the group that brokers could start right away to help people get ahead. So if you want to take the honors here on the next slide here and talk about these next 3 action items that you got for us.
Yeah, I think there's just 3 simple things that if they walk out of this meeting today and they put this in place, they have today's Thursday, they have Friday, maybe it takes into the weekend, they walk in Monday with these 3 things where find something that you can be different within the first 7 days of the process. And that could be, as we talked about, the last text of the day. Maybe it's something where you put in a process where you call on Saturday mornings, because guess what? Other loan officers out there, they're out at their games with the kids, etc. But you might be the one that's going to follow up on a Saturday or Saturday afternoon. Maybe that's something you do different, but find something that you can do different on days, day 1 through 7. Second is secret shop your process and just find one thing. Find one thing. I've never, by the way, I've done probably 600 secret shops. I've never found a perfect one ever. So a lot of people are going to be scared about putting one in and tracking their process. Hey, guess what? It's not going to be perfect. I've never seen one. So you're going to find gaps. Just fix one. And you may already know what the gap is. You may not even have to secret shop, but just commit to fix one thing in your process that you think or would uncover in your secret shop process. And then lastly, find one way to infuse AI into your process today. Okay, and if you don't know what it is, guess what? Use AI to ask what it should be. Like, go tell it about your business, and it may tell you some things that you might be able to infuse it with, or simply just start talking to it for a sales tool as you come in for the day and practice with it. And that could be as simple as that, to get your practice on how to deal with this rebuttal, or how to prioritize your day, or give it your task that you have for the month or your goals, and it will help set a plan. Or you can do anything, really can. It's all about how you prompt it.
That's all. Thank you so much, Scott. Scott Payne, Chief Growth Officer of Shape Software. Absolutely incredible stuff today. And for, again, all the viewers out there, if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to Scott directly via email. We encourage you to visit Shape's website found here for more information on the screen. We have setshape.com/shape-rocket-pro for more information to check that out. And again, this concludes our Pro Performance Fast Track Your Fall Pipeline. But be sure to join us next time, October 23rd. It's a Thursday, same time, and it's going to be about how to lock in new agent partners, and it's going to be a doozy. So wanted to make sure that we say a big, big thank you for all of you that joined us today, and we will see you at our next Pro Performance. Have a great day.